You have to be curious, right? If you're not, you're the person sitting on the couch watching daytime television. That is the life of some people's, and that makes me sad for them, because we have one fucking life. Every breath, every day is a fucking gift. Curiosity really keeps you young. It keeps you youthful. It keeps you interested. And that keeps you interesting. You become an interesting person when you are interested. You know when something isn't what you want to be doing, something that doesn't feel good for you versus something that does. And if it's something that does and doesn't make sense to others, but it's giving you life, even if you don't have everything figured out, run that way. Doesn't fucking matter. Run that way. This is the Roxanne Show. Get ready. It's time to rise. What's up, you guys? Welcome back to the Roxanne Show. Over the last year, my team and I have been collecting questions from our community, and we've been stacking them. There's a variety of topics, health, relationships, love, obviously all things self-mastery, you name it, things related to self-development, growth, self-mastery. And we've been sitting on these questions so that we can start this new Q&A series that we're just going to go ahead and call Ask Roxy. For those of you who are a little bit older, maybe around my age, do you remember Dear Abby? So it's Dear Roxy, not Ask Roxy, Dear Roxy. And I really love, first of all, I love all these questions. It's so wonderful to get questions from our community and to be in a position where I can bring them onto the show and answer them in this way. Because what I have found, just even in my mentorship with women, group coaching, is that a lot of times, one person's question is going to be 20 people's same questions, maybe a little bit different, your life, her life, his life, but it's in the same realm, the same zone of a challenge, of a question. And so, one question that I get to answer will actually be serving so many of you. And that's in addition to just wanting to support each of you who are actually taking the time to send in a question, and just to be able to have that stronger connection with our community at the Roxanne Show. That's really important to us. So whether you're new to the show, if you are, welcome. I hope that you love everything that you're about to take in today, and that you stick around. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe if you feel inspired to do so. And if you're listening on Spotify or watching on Spotify, you can also leave feedback there after the show. Spotify is rad like that. You can let us know how this show, how this episode served you. So anyways, I want to get into it, but just so you guys know that we're going to be putting out a lot more of these Dear Roxy Q&A episodes. And then at the end of this episode, I'll let you know how to send over a question if you would like to do so. So let's get into the first one. So Lily from Santa Fe, New Mexico. What's up, Lily? Lily says, people often talk about reinvention, but you talk more about expansion in this way. Can you explain the difference? I love this question. I'm a writer, and words, I always say, words cast spells. Words are really important to me. It's an energetic experience that you're either giving to yourself, if it's your self-talk, or if you're communicating with others, you are giving them an energetic experience through words. So words are really, I take to them very, a little bit more serious than I think a lot of other people. And reinvention is not, there's nothing wrong with this idea of people reinventing themselves throughout their lives. But I actually see this more as expansion, and prefer that word, because with reinvention, it almost feels like you are starting from anew, or it's this complete shift of your identity that sort of disassociates a bit from your actual authentic essence. I'm not saying that that's what it is. So let me just be clear on that. If reinvention is a word that makes a lot of sense and really resonates with you, I'm not anti reinvention. But just to answer this question, the reason why I love focusing on the idea of expansion is because, in life, we're here to evolve, right? You don't want to stay the same. I'm not saying you become a completely different person over and over again throughout your life, but I'll use myself as an example. Throughout my life, I feel like I've lived so many, truly lived so many lives in this one life that I am living, and I have a long way to go, hopefully still. And I can't look at any part of my evolution where there has been massive changes in how my behaviors, my, practices, my, flow and approach to life. While there's been so many changes, I can't say that any of that is, where I've reinvented myself. What I can stand in is that I have expanded myself. So expansion is this thing where what isn't for you anymore goes away, falls away, sheds. And what is for you comes through. It's either something that is already inherent to you and it's now becoming more pronounced, more fortified, or it can be something newer that you take on in place of what you have released. So I see that as expansion over reinvention, because in my mind, invention, we're inventing something, almost feels like there's a bit of like a costume in a way, right? It feels a little it doesn't feel as connected to your authentic self as much as expansion. Expansion is you expanding in this life. What isn't for you will go away. What is for you will be here and will continue to grow and to shift and to evolve. But again, if reinvention is something that feels good, and for some people it might be the case, right? Because some people feel like they have to completely shift, who they are. Like if you're someone if you were an addict, if you lived a very low frequency life where there were a lot of hardships and unhealthy behaviors and toxicity in your life, well, then it might be a full reinvention of yourself, But even there, I think we all come with the soul and we all have our true essence. And I think a lot of times getting to this place where we are on our highest path as our highest self is not necessarily, I have to become a completely different person from who I truly am, as much as it's, I got to get everything that I am not out of the way so that who I truly am can come through, can breathe through, and I can build off of that. I can expand off of my true essence. So that's how I like to play with the difference of those words. But again, I'm not anti-reinvention, and expansion is just a word that, there's energetics to words too. And every time I think about the word expansion or I feel into the energetics of it, I literally feel myself opening, and that just feels really good to me. So in my life, I don't want to be reinventing myself. I want to be expanding myself. And so play with that, how do those two words sit in your body? How do they feel when you say, I'm reinventing myself? If you feel really empowered and opened and strong in that, with that word, then run with that word and run with whatever that word means and looks like to you in action. But if it's expansion, like it is for me, then, lean in on that one and let that one lead you in your life through your behaviors and your practices and, your goals and your approach. But there's definitely no right or wrong with these words. So thank you for the question, Lily. Next question. Andre Stevens from Vancouver, Canada. Hello, Andre. This question is epic. My God, am I ready for this one? If your 80-year-old self left you a voice memo today, what do you think she'd say? That is such a fucking good question. Man, okay. And by the way, these are very on the cuff. Like I don't prep for these answers. What would my 80-year-old, I think the first thing she would say is thank you. She would say thank you. She would say thank you for really honoring your health your vitality, for keeping you strong. Because you better believe when I'm fucking 80, I'm still going to be physically just crushing it, whatever that looks like. But there are some badass 80-year-olds like sprinting on the track. That'll be me, lifting and all of that. So she will say thank you for really loving, me loving on my body and making sure that my energy was very much honored, boundaries honored, health, vitality honored. I think she will also say, good fucking job for being so true to yourself, no matter how hard it was at times, no matter, hard. I mean, it could be hard for a lot of reasons, right? I have several episodes where I talk about that. But one thing I'll just say right now is that when you're really living true to your heart, to your authentic self, I mean, even just like in the sense of career, you're going to be, you're doing things that don't give you an immediate kickback, that don't immediately give you wins. And if it's true for you, like, this is the thing that you love and that you are here to do, then you're going to keep pushing through, which has been the through line, in my life, and certainly in this, journey as a writer and podcaster. And so, my 80-year-old self will definitely be saying, good fucking work, because my literary empire will have been built. And everything that comes with that in the show, I know. So she'll essentially just be saying, honoring, I know it hasn't been easy to always be so fucking true to who you are, but we can go ahead and celebrate that you have, because it has clearly been the thing to do. And, as a result of me being so true to who I am in my life, the impact that it's put out into the world, the permission it's given other people, not that anybody needs permission, but sometimes, it takes seeing it from others for others to realize, like, oh, fuck, I can do that too. Yeah, I actually can show up and be me, or go after the thing that I really want to do. I could do that too. Right. And so I think it would be a moment of honoring that. I think she would also say, we've got a lot more work to do. We've got a lot more life to live. This is a deep question. I think she would also say, your curiosity has continuously served you, and let it remain to be the case. The questions that I've asked myself over and over, like always just asking questions, always just staying interested, always wanting to discover more of who I am and more of what I'm capable of. There's a lot of questions that have to be asked to be able to live that kind of life, and it's not just an introspective experience, but it's questions that you put into action and you answer into action, and you have to be curious, right? If you're not, you're the person sitting on the couch watching daytime television. Sounds like a judgment. Don't mean for it to be. If it is, then it is. It's just a reality that is the life of some people's, and that makes me sad for them, because we have one fucking life in this one, and it's a gift. Every breath, every day is a fucking gift. There's not one day, not one, where I don't end my day and say thank you. And so I think my 80-year-old self would really want to highlight how my curiosity has really served me, and for me to just, sort of hug my curiosity for how it served me, and for it to, to keep it going, because curiosity really keeps you young. It keeps you youthful. It keeps you interested. And that keeps you interesting. You become an interesting person when you are interested. What else? My 80-year-old self would say, yeah, you were always right to trust yourself. You were right to trust yourself. even if it whooped your ass. Again and again and again, in different moments, in different ways, but it served you. So keep doing that. And then my 80-year-old self would tell me some things that I can't say on this channel because I like my privacy. So I love that question. Thank you so much, Andre. Thank you so much. All right, next question. Jules Edmond, from Melbourne, Australia. What's one decision you made in your career that didn't make sense to others, but made perfect sense to you? So good. And it's like, yeah, I would say mostly all of them, truly. But here's the big piece. Here's early on in, I think it was from 20 to 21 is when I realized that I was more of an entrepreneur. Now, I didn't even have the word entrepreneur in my lexicon yet, right? But it was me realizing that while the paycheck can prove to be important, right? Like allows you some stability to pay the bills and all that, it didn't feel like my route, meaning I didn't like feeling locked in to something, even if it meant that it was going to provide security. I say that in quotes. It didn't feel like my route. So, I was the grinder, the hustler who would work with these, I was freelance. I was working with grassroots companies. And so it's not like I haven't had a paycheck. I definitely have had paychecks, but, in that continued sense. But yeah, I don't know. I think I felt at a very young age that I really didn't like a roof over what was possible for me, and I was someone that was more inclined to go all or nothing than to sort of live in that middle space where it's like, oh, okay, I can get this salary. And then, maybe every year you get like a percentage increase or however that works. I don't even know, generally I do, but like in the specifics, I really do feel like, those beginning years, especially when you are operating life like that, fuck, man, it's hard. It's really hard because you have bills, you're a human, you have to eat, you have to, so it's this big gamble constantly of how are you going to make it? How are you going to get across this week or this month? How are you going to pay your rent? How are you going to, and what I so deeply value, and by the way, like I'm not, everybody who has their salary and their job is like, it all comes down to what feels good, right, and true for you, right? If that's the path for you, because that feels good and allows you to feel really good in your life, then that is the path for you, right? But for me, I don't know, it didn't feel like my path. And so at times it could also look very irresponsible because when you're going through these moments where it's like, well, how am I going to pay this? How am I going to pay that? It looks like, well, the easy thing to do is, you get the steady paycheck. So then you don't have that question. And again, I say this with so much, I just want to be, I'm going to free flow as fucking Roxanne like I do always, but I want to be very mindful that I'm not putting anybody's path down. For me, the paycheck feels like a trap. For me, Roxanne, me. I don't believe that it's truly a sense of security. In fact, I think that there is no such thing as security that comes from an external source. I think the only security that we could ever truly, truly cultivate and have in our life is the security that we build within ourselves. Period. End of story. And, the paycheck can be, there's some hefty fucking paychecks out there. So they could be, I'm not saying the paycheck's the enemy. I'm saying, again, you have to know yourself, and that's like the big part of the conversation with me always. And so if you are someone who, like me, would rather go, you know what, I'd rather work, even if like draw to a commission or freelance. So I have different varieties of potential where it's like, it's not this set thing so that, if I work like this, it could be like, boom, all of a sudden I get this big influx of cash or opportunity or whatever it is. Like for me, I'm a fucking gambler like that. I have a high tolerance for risk. A lot of people don't. A lot of people cannot touch this level of risk that, they can't go near it. And I respect that. And maybe some people can't in their lives because, there's mouths to feed or whatever. But for me, again, because I'm answering this question, that part is probably the part in the earlier stages of me building a career path. It kind of looked like, wait, what are you doing over here? Because there were some fucking hard moments. And even in this season of my life, building out my brand and my business, there's still tough moments, but nobody's questioning, anything that I'm doing because it's very clear that I'm doing what I'm here to do. And we're doing all right. We're doing good. And so, but that would be it, and maybe what I could offer just to close out this question is it's really good for you to, whether you're someone who is at a point in their lives where whether you're trying to figure out what your next, move is with your career or job, what you really want to do, what, or maybe something that you're doing right now isn't necessarily making sense to others, but is feeling really good for you. I mean, everything is going to come down to how much do you fucking know yourself? And I'm not saying you have to have everything figured out about who you are, but because a lot of times you have to move into action with life to get that material to learn more about yourself. But what I can feel very confident to say is that, when something isn't what you want to be doing, with something that doesn't feel good for you versus something that does. And if it's something that does and doesn't make sense to others, but it's giving you life, even if you don't have everything figured out, run that way. Doesn't fucking matter. Run that way. Because what will come, first of all, you're honoring your truth. You're honoring yourself. You always want to be doing that. It's so important to say yes to you when you're having that feeling that you want to move in that direction. This is so huge. Number one, you learn to trust yourself more. Number two, this is your unique path. That feeling is not, it's a signal from your soul. If it's a fleeting emotion, that's different. But if it's something that feels really good to you in your body, you feel open, you feel excited, you feel like maybe even a little bit nervous, but it still feels good, you have to fucking move in that direction. And it doesn't matter if it makes sense to anybody else but you. And let that action, that moving forward into all that, it will show you what comes next. If it doesn't already have long legs on it or like a full path in front of, laid out for you. So yeah. That's the long answer. The short would have been probably everything. But it was a great question. Thank you so much for that one. Next question, Sophia from Brooklyn, New York. What is up, Sophia? And what is up, Brooklyn? Okay, I'm in a huge growth season and feel lonely in the process. What do I do when I've outgrown my old circles but haven't found my new ones yet? Sophia, this is such a radical question. I know there are a lot of people listening who are in your position. And so I actually just did an episode 310 on this exact topic. We're always growing and evolving. I think when you're really big into self-development, especially, you're really going to be someone who's going to go through these seasons, these moments. I certainly have. I like to think of the lonely chapter as the invitation to self, like to get to know more of yourself, to build more self-intimacy. And you'll hear that if you watch or listen to episode 310. But as far as what you can do to, in this phase where you're kind of phasing out of, old circles and you haven't yet found your new ones we live in a time where online, like there are so many, and I know it can get weird and you don't know people, but there are communities out there that you can absolutely become a part of. I have one myself, totally plugging and pitching my Substack because it's awesome. And my Substack community, it's really special because people in Substack in particular, they hang out on the deep end. They read, they like to go deep, right? Versus maybe if, on other platforms, you're kind of more quick hit dopamine. You don't necessarily want to dive deep into, self-development or things that, help us grow. But on Substack, they absolutely do. So my community there, they're just so engaged, so real, so supportive to everyone in the community. We do these writing challenges twice a quarter, my Heart Alchemy writing challenges. And it's so special. For 30 days, we're just in there with each other, guiding each other through, not easy prompts that I create for the participants. But the whole idea is just connection and to be, around people, whether it's online or obviously in person, is so wonderful and ideal, where you have shared values, where you have shared really consciousness levels too, where your attributes and your behaviors, your standards are more in alignment. And it can take some time when you're phasing out of, a certain sort of season of identity that you've been living, and you're moving into a new one. But I would say you can start online. Definitely come into mine if you feel called to. There's information in the show notes for that. Or look, on Instagram, there's so many different, awesome people out there who are hosting great communities. And then there are definitely, in-person events that are always happening. So I think it's just being curious and doing a little bit of research to where you can start interacting, even if it's with one person. That one person that you feel in alignment with can lead to, a handful of awesome, very like-minded individuals as well. And then I would say, like, there's also this reality of, like, just hold on, and appreciate this time that you have where you are in the middle, because it is a symbol of growth that you are expanding. And, I'll give you a little bit of what I talked about in episode 310, but the invitation to get closer to yourself is a really important piece here. That space where there aren't that many people around you can be very valuable for a lot of different reasons. When you have more silence around you, and I'm not at all saying isolate yourself, but when you find yourself in more moments of solitude, because again, you don't have the same crew and people as you did before, it just allows you to hear your voice more. It allows you to hear your heart. It allows you to be with yourself more. And this is a hard thing for a lot of people to do, but you don't want that to be hard to do. None of you want to be very comfortable to be with yourself. I'm not saying isolate yourself. We know it is a huge marker of health to have community, to interact with people. So by no means am I saying that. Look, this is a community-based episode, right? I'm answering your questions. I am all about community, but I am also all about making sure that you have time just for you, and that when you are in that space and time with yourself, that you're comfortable, that it feels good. It's not something that you're trying to run out of really quickly and you're trying to fill in the space really quickly. No, you are filling in the space with you, and you need that time with you, and that space is sacred and it needs to be honored. So, aside from putting yourself out there to make new friends, to join communities, to go to events where you can, interact and connect with, new people that could be really in alignment with you. I do think there's this other part where you have to hold on and really try to value that space that you're in right now, because it's really an opportunity for you to build more self-intimacy. And that self-intimacy I frame as like the home for you to get to know your authentic self, love your authentic self, lead your life from your authentic self, because you trust yourself, because your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-value, your self-estimate becomes stronger when you can actually really come to know, love, and trust and respect your authentic self. So there's value to also being in this space where you're not fully occupied with new friends or people in general. So yeah, just think about that, feel into that, journal, write, come into my Substack, if you don't write already, you're probably going to become, I'm not saying you have to become a writer and write books, or maybe you will actually, because a lot of girls are actually on that path now, but you'll be in community with me and with epic individuals in my community. And also you will really start to honor and appreciate and hold sacred the space that you have with yourself. So I love that question, and I hope to meet you in my Substack. Final question, Rashad B from Atlanta. What's up, Rashad? Okay, what is the craziest, most creatively bold thing you've ever done, and what did it teach you? Creative. Okay, well, I mean, look, I've done a lot of bold things, and I've been a creative my whole life. There's no way I can't say that the podcast is actually the biggest, craziest. I mean, crazy in the sense that I say crazy in such a good way, right? Because it was this feeling that I had. I had been listening to podcasts for a couple of years at that point, and I really loved the medium. But, I went into it. It's a form of public speaking. I wasn't a public speaker. I was in a whole different career. I was a, celebrity makeup artist. So, I didn't start the podcast to build a brand. I wasn't approaching it to, put my business or even myself. I wasn't trying to put myself out there. It wasn't about that. It was about, I'm curious. I love connecting with others. I love learning. I know that I have some wisdom in here. I learned it just through my personal life, seeing how people respond to whether it's advice, whether it's, just whatever it is, things that I would share and the impact that it actually made in their life. I was like, well, okay, I'll come out and I'll share this. I have some things to say. And actually, without my consciousness even realizing this, what I was saying to myself is that you are significant enough to put yourself out there. Fuck it, even if it's uncomfortable. So it felt very bold for me to do that, especially, at the time. And this is, this year, depending on when you're listening to this, but in this moment, 2025, or watching this, this will be 8 years of the show. So what did it teach me? It taught me that I was right to listen, because I'm living my dharma, and this show will go on till I'm out of here in this life. This is my thing. This is my thing. So it taught me yet again what I often come out here and talk about. I know I did in this episode, that trusting yourself is the thing to do. It's always the thing to do. And I'm so grateful that I said yes to myself and took action to start this, podcast and run with the crazy, bold, creative idea of creating a fucking full-time, full-on show. So yeah, who knows? I wonder what the answer to that question will be in my life 5 years from now. Because I know the way that I'm leading my life, I'll have a few more things to add to that. That will be, they'll be whatever they're going to be, but I think they'll be fun for me to answer. So I love that question. And I hope all of you who are sitting on, something that feels crazy and bold and creative, but it's just vibrating like a truth in your heart, that this is something you really want to take action on, you really want to initiate, you really want to try. I hope that you hearing me sharing that, fuck, here I am 8 years later, almost 7.5. This was the fucking thing to do. I hope it inspires you to make the move and just go for it. Fucking go for it. It's not a dress rehearsal, people. This is our one life. So love that question. Love all of these questions. I hope these answers have been supportive to all of you. I'd love to know. If you're watching this on YouTube, let me know in the comments. If you are watching this on Spotify or listening on Spotify, leave feedback there too. If you would like to leave a question, I would like you to DM me on Instagram, please. I am at Roxy Look. It is in the show notes, ROXYLOOK. If you're not already there, connected with me in my community on Instagram, I'd love for you to do that. But that is where I'm going to connect with you and take your question and hopefully be sharing it on the show soon. Thank you guys so much. I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much for listening, you guys. Please like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star rating and review.